The Codebook, The Science of Secrecy, From Ancient Egypt to Quantum Cryptography by Simon Singh. Picture a cold October morning in 1586. A queen enters a courtroom, but she's not there to judge anyone. She's the one being judged. Mary, Queen of Scots, weakened by years locked away, still carries herself like royalty. When she spots a throne, she naturally moves toward it, thinking someone finally remembered who she was. But here's the crushing reality. That throne belongs to her cousin Elizabeth, the woman accusing her. Mary gets directed to a simple velvet chair on the opposite side of the room, the defendant's seat. She's fighting for her life, accused of plotting to kill Elizabeth and steal the English crown. The prosecutor, Sir Francis Walsingham, isn't just Elizabeth's secretary, he's her spy master, and he's already arrested and executed the other conspirators. Now he needs to prove Mary was pulling the strings. But Mary has an ace up her sleeve. Every letter she sent to the plotters was written in an elaborate cipher, a secret language of symbols she believed was impossible to crack. Even if Walsingham intercepted her letters, she figured they were just meaningless squiggles. They couldn't possibly be used against her. Her entire life, in that moment, rests on the strength of her code. What she doesn't know is that Walsingham has his own secret weapon, someone who can shatter any code, who can transform her secret symbols back into damning words of treason. Not for the first time, and definitely not for the last. Someone's life hangs in the balance of an invisible battle between codemaker and codebreaker. Today, we're diving into Simon Singh's masterpiece, The Codebook. This isn't just a collection of puzzles. It's the story of a hidden war that's been raging for thousands of years. It's a secret history of the world, where the heroes aren't soldiers charging into battle, but brilliant minds working in silence, fighting an intellectual arms race that's decided the fate of kings, queens, and entire nations. By the time we're done, you'll understand this secret language of history, and you'll see how this ancient battle for secrecy matters more to your life today in our digital world than ever before. This is the story of how secrets are made and how they're broken. To understand the world of codes, we first need to grasp a fundamental choice every person with a secret has faced since the dawn of time. Do you hide the fact that your message exists, or do you hide what it means? Think back to ancient Greece. The historian Herodotus tells us about a Greek exile named Demaratus living in Persia. He witnesses the tyrannical king Xerxes secretly assembling the largest army in history for a surprise attack on Greece. Demaratus needs to warn his homeland, but Persian guards are everywhere. How can he possibly send a message? He decides to hide its very existence. He takes wooden writing tablets, which were normally covered in wax, scrapes the wax off completely, and writes his warning directly onto the bare wood. Then he covers it back up with fresh wax. The tablets look totally blank. They sail through every checkpoint without raising an eyebrow. When they arrive in Sparta, everyone's confused, until a clever queen named Gorgo suggests scraping off the wax. The message appears, Greece prepares for war, and Xerxes loses his surprise advantage. At the decisive naval battle of Salamis, the Persian fleet gets crushed, and Greece survives. This art of hiding a message's very existence is called steganography. It's a clever trick. Another Greek historian describes someone who shaved his messenger's head, tattooed a message on his scalp, waited for the hair to grow back, and sent him off. A bit time-consuming, sure, but it works. Steganography includes everything from invisible ink made from lemon juice to modern spies shrinking entire pages down to a microdot the size of a period. But steganography has a fatal flaw. If your message ever gets discovered, if those guards decide to scrape the wax or shave the messenger's head, the secret's immediately blown. That's why a more powerful science developed alongside it, cryptography. The goal of cryptography isn't to hide the message itself, but to scramble its meaning. You jumble the message so anyone who intercepts it sees only gibberish. Only the person you're sending it to, who knows the secret to unscrambling it, can read your actual words. Early cryptography was built on two simple ideas. First is transposition, where you just rearrange the letters. It's like creating an anagram. A simple version is the rail fence cipher, where you write a message on 2 lines. Meet at dawn becomes MEADW on top and ETAN on the bottom. You write it out as MEADWETAN. To anyone else, it's nonsense. But your friend knows to simply split the letters back onto 2 lines to reveal the message. The ancient Spartans used a clever transposition device called a cytale. A commander would take a wooden staff of a specific thickness, wrap a leather strip around it, and write his message along the staff. When unwrapped, the letters on the strip would be jumbled. The messenger would wear the leather strip as a belt. The only way to read the message was to wrap it around another staff of the exact same diameter. The second core idea is substitution, where you replace each letter with a different letter or symbol. The most famous early example is the Caesar cipher, used by Julius Caesar himself. He simply replaced each letter with the letter 3 places down the alphabet. So A becomes D, B becomes E, and so on. The phrase Veni Vidi Vici would become YHQLYL This might seem ridiculously simple, and it is. But it introduces the most important concept in all of cryptography: the difference between the algorithm and the key. The algorithm is the general method, in this case, shifting the alphabet. The key is the specific number of places you shift it. Caesar used a key of 3, but you could use any key from 1 to 25. A cipher's security doesn't depend on keeping the method secret, but on keeping the key secret. For centuries, the simple substitution cipher dominated secret writing. You don't have to just shift the alphabet, you can create a completely jumbled cipher alphabet. There are more than 400 trillion possible arrangements of the 26 letters. If you could check one key every second, it would take you billions of times the age of the universe to check them all. For a very long time, people thought the substitution cipher was truly unbreakable. The codemakers had created a perfect defense, but the codebreakers were about to discover a crack in the armor. The breakthrough didn't come from a soldier or a spy, but from scholars in the golden age of Islamic civilization, around the 9th century. The Abbasid Caliphate was a center of learning, with scholars busy translating texts from all over the world. Theologians, in particular, were studying the Quran with incredible intensity. They wanted to establish the chronological order of the Prophet Muhammad's revelations. To do this, they began counting the frequency of words in each chapter. This led them to a simple yet profound observation about language itself. In any language, some letters appear more often than others. In English, the letter E is the most common, making up about 13% of all text. T and A are next. On the flip side, letters like J, Q, X, and Z are incredibly rare. A brilliant 9th-century Arab philosopher named Al-Kindi was the first to realize this pattern was the key to breaking any substitution cipher. His method, known as frequency analysis, was revolutionary. Here's how it works. You take an encrypted message, a long string of gibberish. You count how many times each symbol or letter appears. Let's say the most common symbol is X. Since E is the most common letter in English, there's a good bet that X is the substitute for E. If the next most common symbol is P, you can guess it might be the substitute for T. By matching the frequencies of the ciphertext letters to the known frequencies of the plaintext language, you can slowly but surely reveal the original message. You don't need to check all those trillions of possible keys. You just need to analyze the patterns hidden within language itself. For centuries, the monoalphabetic substitution cipher was thought to be invincible. Al-Kindi and his frequency analysis had turned it into a simple puzzle. The codebreakers had gained the upper hand. And this brings us back to Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary was using what's called a nomenclator, which is a substitution cipher with some extra tricks. It used symbols for letters, but also included symbols for common words like and, or, for, and even had nulls, symbols that meant nothing, thrown in just to confuse anyone trying to break the code. But at its heart, it was still a monoalphabetic cipher. Each symbol consistently stood for the same letter or word, and that meant it was vulnerable to frequency analysis. Walsingham's codebreaker, Thomas Phillips, was a master of this art. He intercepted Mary's letters to the plotter Anthony Babington. He would have counted the frequencies of all the symbols, identified the ones for E, T, and A, and slowly pieced together the message. The cipher gave Mary a dangerous sense of security. She wrote explicitly about her support for Elizabeth's assassination, believing her words were safe. Phillips not only deciphered her damning letter, but he even forged a postscript in her own cipher, asking for the names of the 6 men who were supposed to carry out the deed. Babington, trusting the cipher, replied with the names. Walsingham now had all the evidence he needed. The decoded letters were presented at Mary's trial. She had no defense. Her belief in an unbreakable code led directly to her execution. The codebreakers had won a decisive victory. The intellectual arms race was heating up. The codemakers needed a new, stronger cipher, one that could resist frequency analysis. The solution was born in the minds of Renaissance thinkers, but it was perfected by a 16th-century French diplomat named Blaise de Vigenère. His invention, the Vigenère cipher, was so powerful it became known as le chiffre indéchiffrable, the indecipherable cipher. The genius of the Vigenère cipher is that it doesn't use just one cipher alphabet. It uses 26 of them. Think of the Caesar cipher, where you shift the alphabet by a certain number of places. The Vigenère cipher uses a different shift for each letter of the message. How do you keep track of which shift to use? With a keyword. Let's say your keyword is white. You write it repeatedly above your message. Divert troops to East Ridge. WHITE, 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 DI, versus ERTTROOPSTOEAST. To encrypt the first letter, D, you use the first letter of the key, W. This tells you to use a Caesar cipher with a shift of 22. To encrypt the second letter, I, you use the second letter of the key, H, which tells you to use a shift of 7. And so on. The Vigenère cipher completely destroys frequency analysis. Look at the letter E. In our example, the first, E, is encrypted using the key letter T. The second, E, is encrypted using the key letter I. The same plaintext letter becomes 2 different ciphertext letters. The letter T appears 3 times in the message. Each time, it's encrypted with a different key letter, producing 3 different ciphertext letters. The patterns vanish. The frequency distribution of the ciphertext becomes flattened and randomized. An E is no longer always an X. Now it could be an X, A, Q, A, Z, anything, depending on the keyword. For 300 years, the Vigenère cipher was considered the pinnacle of cryptography. The codemakers were back on top. So how was it broken? The answer came from one of the most brilliant and eccentric minds of the 19th century, Charles Babbage. You might know him as the father of the computer, the man who designed the difference engine. But Babbage had a lifelong fascination with ciphers. He realized that while the Vigenère cipher hides the frequency of individual letters, it has a hidden weakness. The keyword repeats. If your keyword is white, it's only 5 letters long. That means every 5th letter in your message is encrypted using the same Caesar shift. The 1st, 6th, 11th, and 16th letters are all encrypted using the W shift. The 2nd, 7th, and 12th letters are all encrypted using the H shift. The Vigenère cipher wasn't one unbreakable cipher, it was 5 separate, simple Caesar ciphers all woven together. The trick was to figure out the length of the keyword. Babbage's method, later independently discovered and published by a Prussian officer named Friedrich Kasiski, was to search the ciphertext for repeated sequences of letters. For example, if you see the sequence ZPDX appear twice in your message, separated by 20 letters, it's very likely that the same piece of plaintext was encrypted by the same part of the keyword. This suggests the length of the keyword must be a factor of the distance between the repetitions. In this case, the keyword could be 2, 4, 5, 10, or 20 letters long. By finding several repeated sequences and looking for a common factor in their separations, you can make a strong guess at the length of the keyword. Once you know the keyword is, say, 5 letters long, you can pull out every fifth letter from the ciphertext. This new, smaller text was all encrypted with the same simple Caesar cipher, and you know how to break that. Frequency analysis. You do this for each of the 5 interwoven ciphers, and the Vigana, the indecipherable cipher, falls apart. Once again, the code breakers had triumphed. This brings us to the dawn of the 20th century. The invention of the radio changed everything. Now messages could be sent instantly across vast distances. But there was a problem. Anyone could listen in. For military commanders, this was a nightmare. They needed a cipher that was faster, more complex, and more secure than anything that had come before. The answer was the mechanization of secrecy. And the most famous and most feared of these new cipher machines was the German Enigma. Imagine a machine that looks a bit like a typewriter. You press a key, say A, and a different letter, say Q, lights up on a lampboard. It's a substitution cipher. But here's the genius of it. After you press that first key, an internal rotor, a scrambler disk, full of complex wiring, clicks forward one position. Now, if you press A, again it won't be Q, it might be J, and after that the rotor clicks again. The Enigma machine was a polyalphabetic cipher on steroids. Instead of a keyword of 5 or 10 letters, the basic Enigma had 3 rotors that rotated like the odometer in a car. The first rotor clicked with every letter. After a full revolution, it would kick the second rotor one step. And after the second rotor made a full revolution, it kicked the third. This meant the machine would cycle through 26 times 26 times 26, over 17,000 different cipher alphabets before the pattern repeated. And that was just the beginning. The Germans added a plug board at the front, which allowed the operator to swap pairs of letters before they even entered the rotors. This increased the number of possible starting positions, the number of keys, to an astronomical figure. To check every possible key, you would need more time than the age of the universe. The Germans believed, with good reason, that Enigma was absolutely unbreakable. The task of cracking Enigma fell to a small, underfunded group of mathematicians in Poland. They were caught between a resurgent Germany and an aggressive Soviet Union, and they knew their survival depended on intelligence. The leader of this mathematical team was a quiet, brilliant young man named Marian Rejewski. Rejewski made the first critical breakthrough. The Germans, in an attempt to prevent errors, required their operators to encrypt the 3-letter message key twice at the beginning of each message. For example, if the operator chose PGH as the key for that particular message, they would type PGH, PGH into the Enigma, which might come out as Kiev Bay J. Rejewski realized this repetition was a colossal mistake. He knew that the first and fourth letters of the encrypted key, K and B, were encryptions of the same plaintext letter, P. The only reason they were different was that the Enigma rotors had moved 3 steps between the 2 encryptions. This created a mathematical relationship between the letters. By analyzing thousands of messages each day, Rejewski could build up a complete set of these relationships, a fingerprint that was unique to the initial rotor settings for that day. It took him and his team a full year to catalog all 105,000 possible rotor settings and their corresponding fingerprints. But once they had their catalog, they could find the day's key in a matter of hours. For years, the Poles were secretly reading Germany's most sensitive communications. But in 1938, the Germans upgraded the Enigma, adding more rotors and more plugboard cables. The number of possible keys exploded, and the Polish method became too slow and expensive. With the invasion of Poland imminent, they made a historic decision. In a secret meeting just weeks before the war began, they handed over everything they knew: their methods, their replica Enigma machines, and their designs for automated code-breaking machines called bombs, to the British and the French. The British set up a top-secret code-breaking center at a Victorian mansion called Bletchley Park. It was here that a new team of brilliant minds, led by the eccentric genius Alan Turing, would take the Polish work and turn it into an industrial-scale intelligence operation. Turing's great insight was to attack Enigma by exploiting human laziness and predictability. German operators would often use stereotyped phrases in their messages. A weather report would almost always contain the word Wetter, which means weather. An officer's message might start with "En den General," meaning "to the general." Turing called these predictable pieces of text cribs. If you could guess that a certain piece of ciphertext, say ETJWPX, stood for the plaintext Wetter, you had a powerful clue. The challenge was to find the Enigma setting that would turn Wetter into ETJWPX. Turing designed an electromechanical machine, a vastly improved version of the Polish bomb that could test thousands of Enigma settings per second. It would race through the possibilities, looking for a setting that matched the crib. When it found a potential match, the machine would stop, and the codebreakers would test the setting by hand. Often, within hours of the Germans changing the daily key, Bletchley Park would have it cracked. The intelligence that flowed from Bletchley Park, codenamed Ultra, was arguably the single most important factor in the Allied victory. It gave them advance warning of bombing raids, revealed the positions of U-boats in the Atlantic, and provided a detailed picture of German troop movements before the D-Day landings. Churchill called the codebreakers his geese that laid the golden eggs and never cackled. After the war, everything about Bletchley Park was kept secret. Turing, the man who had done so much to save his country, was tragically persecuted for his homosexuality and died in 1954, his contributions unknown to the public for decades. The secret of Ultra was so well kept that the British even sold captured Enigma machines to their former colonies, who used them for years, completely unaware that their supposedly secure communications were being routinely read by the very people who sold them the machines. The story of cryptography seems to be a never-ending cycle. A new cipher is invented, everyone believes it's unbreakable, and then a brilliant codebreaker finds a flaw. But in the 1970s, something happened that would break this cycle forever. The problem wasn't the strength of the ciphers anymore, it was the key. In the digital age, with computers able to create incredibly complex ciphers, the real challenge was key distribution. Imagine a bank wanting to send encrypted financial data to thousands of clients. It would need to securely deliver a unique, secret key to each client. This was a logistical nightmare. For 2,000 years, one truth seemed self-evident. To communicate in secret, you first have to share a secret key. Then two young researchers at Stanford University, Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman, came up with an idea that seemed to defy logic. They asked a radical question: is it possible to communicate securely without sharing a secret key in advance? Their solution, which became known as public key cryptography, is one of the most beautiful and counterintuitive ideas in the history of science. Here's the analogy from the book that makes it clear. Imagine Alice wants to send a secret message to Bob, but the only way to do so is to put it in a box and send it through a completely untrustworthy postal service, where every package gets opened. Alice can put her message in a box and lock it with a padlock. But if she sends it to Bob, he can't open it because he doesn't have her key. If she sends the key, the postal service will just steal it. The solution is astonishingly simple. Alice puts her message in the box and locks it with her padlock, padlock A. She sends it to Bob. Bob can't open it, but he adds his own padlock, padlock B, and sends the doubly locked box back to Alice. Alice then uses her key to remove her padlock, leaving only Bob's. She sends the box back to Bob one last time. Now the box is secured only by padlock B, and Bob has the key. He can open it and read the message. They've shared a secret without ever sharing a key. Diffie and Hellman needed to find a mathematical equivalent to this padlock trick. They found it in the strange world of one-way functions, mathematical operations that are easy to do in one direction, but incredibly difficult to reverse. Mixing two colors of paint is a one-way function. It's easy to mix yellow and blue to get green, but impossible to unmix the green back into yellow and blue. The specific one-way function that became the foundation of modern cryptography was discovered by three researchers at MIT: Ron Rivest, Adi Shamir, and Leonard Adelman. Their system, known as RSA, is based on the difficulty of factoring large numbers. It's easy to take two huge prime numbers and multiply them together. A computer can do it in a fraction of a second. But if you're given the result of that multiplication, a massive number with hundreds of digits, and asked to find the two original prime numbers, the task is practically impossible. It would take the fastest supercomputers in the world centuries to figure it out. This is the heart of the RSA cipher. Every person generates their own pair of keys. One is a public key, which includes the massive composite number. You can publish this key anywhere, in a directory, on the internet. Anyone who wants to send you a secret message uses your public key to encrypt it. The other key is a private key, which includes the two secret prime numbers that were used to create your public key. This private key is the only thing that can reverse the encryption. Because you're the only person who knows your secret prime numbers, you're the only person who can decrypt messages sent to you. It's the digital equivalent of Alice making thousands of open padlocks, her public key, and distributing them to the world, while keeping the one and only key that can open them, her private key, securely in her pocket. Public key cryptography solved the key distribution problem and ushered in the era of secure e-commerce, digital signatures, and private communication for the masses. The codemakers had finally achieved what seemed to be the ultimate victory. But in a strange twist of history, we now know that Diffie, Hellman, and the RSA team weren't the first to have this idea. In the early 1970s, years before the American academics, a quiet, brilliant cryptographer named James Ellis, working in complete secrecy at the British Intelligence Headquarters (GCHQ), had independently conceived of public key cryptography. Another GCHQ mathematician, Clifford Cox, then came up with a system that was virtually identical to RSA. Their work was so secret it was classified for over 25 years. They had to remain silent as others received the fame and fortune for a discovery they'd made years earlier. And so here we are today. We live in a world where unbreakable cryptography is available to anyone with a personal computer. A world that people like Phil Zimmermann fought for when he released his powerful encryption software, Pretty Good Privacy, or PGP, for free on the internet, sparking a battle with the U.S. government over the public's right to privacy. The arms race seems to be over, with the codemakers victorious. But there's one final, mind-bending chapter to this story. Physicists are now developing a new kind of computer, a quantum computer. It operates on the bizarre principles of quantum mechanics, where a particle can be in multiple places at once. A quantum computer would be so powerful, it could break ciphers like RSA in a matter of seconds. It could factor those massive numbers that are the foundation of our digital security. The codebreakers, armed with a quantum computer, would once again reign supreme. But the same science that threatens to destroy all modern cryptography also offers its salvation. Scientists are also developing quantum cryptography, a system that uses the fundamental laws of physics to create a truly, provably, absolutely unbreakable cipher. It's a system where the very act of eavesdropping on a message would disturb it in a way that's immediately detectable. The battle for secrecy, which began with wax tablets and shaved heads, has now moved into the strange probabilistic world of quantum physics. And it's a battle that will shape the future of our privacy, our economy, and our freedom in the information age. Reading the codebook is like being given a secret decoder ring for history. You start to see that beneath the surface of the great battles and political intrigues, there's always been this silent, intellectual war being waged. And what's so fascinating is that this war is driven by two of the most fundamental human impulses: the desire to keep secrets and the desire to uncover them. Simon Singh does a masterful job of showing that this isn't just an abstract mathematical game, it's a story about people. It's about the life of a queen hanging in the balance, the quiet determination of Polish mathematicians working against the clock, the tragic genius of Alan Turing, and the rebellious vision of people like Whitfield Diffie and Phil Zimmermann, who believed that privacy wasn't just for governments, but for everyone. The central lesson for me is that technology is never neutral. The invention of writing created the need to hide it. The invention of the radio created the need for ciphers like Enigma. The invention of the Internet created the need for public key cryptography. Every advance in our ability to communicate creates a new vulnerability and a new need to protect ourselves. And that brings us to today. You're living in a world that's more connected than any time in human history. Your messages, your purchases, your entire digital life exists as a stream of ones and zeros flying through cyberspace. And the question of who gets to read that information and who doesn't is one of the most important questions of our time. The battle described in this book is no longer just for generals and spies, it's for you. When you use a credit card online, when you send a private message to a friend, you're relying on the legacy of these codemakers. The debate over encryption and privacy that we see in the news today is the modern-day battlefield of this ancient war. Do we value our privacy so much that we're willing to accept that criminals might use the same tools to hide their activities? Or do we value security so much that we're willing to give governments a backdoor into our digital lives? This book doesn't give you the answer, but it gives you the context to understand the question. If there's one simple action you can take away from this, it's to become more aware of your own digital privacy, understand what encryption is and why it matters. Think about the services you use and how they protect your information. This isn't about being paranoid, it's about being informed. The pioneers in this book fought for the tools that give us the potential for privacy in a digital world. It's up to us to understand them, value them, and use them wisely. That was a summary of The Codebook by Simon Singh. We've journeyed through the highlights today, from ancient Greece to the quantum frontier. But I'll be honest with you, a summary can only show you the map. The real treasure is in the journey itself. The real magic happens when you read the book and get lost in the stories, when you feel the thrill of the breakthrough and the weight of the consequences. This summary is designed to help you decide if this story is one you want to experience for yourself. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity, if you felt a pull toward this secret history, then I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning facts. It's an adventure that will change how you see the world around you and the invisible world of information that connects us all. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the world's most successful minds. Let's keep learning and growing together.